A vaccine for COVID-19 has been approved by the FDA, and you've asked questions, so it's time for an update. Hello, I'm Dr. John Waits, a family physician that delivers babies, leads a residency training program, and together with Dr. Lacey Smith, I co-lead a network of community health center clinics called Cahaba Medical Care in central Alabama. 2020 has been a difficult year in so many ways for all of us. For many of us, the vaccine is exactly what we've been waiting for and something we thought was too unrealistic for this year. For example, here's a question from one of Cahaba's internal town halls, and lo and behold, it's here. I want to go through some of the common questions that I've been asked by our patients, our employees, and honestly, many of our doctors and other healthcare providers. If you are vaccine hesitant, I totally understand. I think that this will present useful information for you as you make decisions. If you're against vaccines in general, there still may be something here for you, and I'd be grateful for the chance to dialogue respectfully with you as well. At the end of the day, I respect the conclusions that you come up with for yourself and your family. I want to avoid therapeutic arrogance. I hope that you hear good faith answers to common questions from a family physician who has experience with vaccines, but is approaching things with humility. I want to start with a somewhat unexpected question that is probably the most common one I've gotten in person over the last couple of weeks. Were aborted babies used to make this vaccine? The answer is no. Pfizer's vaccine and Moderna's vaccine are completely synthetic, not grown from human cells at all. Here's Dr. Craig DeLisi, a close friend of mine from medical school and residency, on CBN News with a great discussion of the issue of aborted fetal cells and vaccines in general. And in short, aborted fetal cells were not used on the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, nor on most of the COVID-19 vaccines on offer. It's only the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson vaccines that has some parts of the development process using cell cultures derived from the aborted fetal tissue. It's important to say not ongoing abortions. Many Catholic and other Christian bioethicists make this distinction and allow use of this vaccine since there are not ongoing abortions. You can click the link for a full discussion of this point. The number one question I've gotten is just the natural question about the speed of vaccine development related to safety and efficacy. Vaccine development was at record speed. What shortcuts, if any, were taken? Or is this just what we can do now in the 21st century? This is just a great question. It is only natural to wonder if a rush job is a quality job and if it's safe. So allow me just one moment of respectful humor. It's a worldwide pandemic, a modern-day plague. We wanted a vaccine fast. We got not just one, but 2 vaccines in less than 12 months before the year is over. And now we're suspicious of it? I imagine the research scientists who've been in a bunker for this year laboring away saying, "What more do you want? Isn't this what you've asked us to do?" But seriously, I get it. These are great and fair questions. What's the deal with this speed? So, when evaluating and interpreting the data that exists on current vaccines, it's critical to understand what a virus is and what a vaccine is. I mean, I can't give you a scientific answer without a little bit of science. I don't want to take this for granted, so if you'll indulge me, just a little bit of background science, I'll try to be efficient with your time. The coronavirus, like many viruses, is a not quite alive bit of genetic material surrounded by a lipid layer and studded with proteins. Some of these surface proteins allow the virus itself to gain access into human cells. Once inside a cell, the virus is broken down and the viral genetic instructions, or RNA, are released. And the cell's own manufacturing machinery is used to make viral proteins, which are then assembled into a new virus. And infection is when one human cell releases many, many new copies of the virus on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, and then spread. Eventually, though, the immune system recognizes what's going on and forms antibodies to recognizable portions of the virus. how rapidly this happens, and how much damage is already done before our immune system learns to, it partially defines how much damage a virus can do to a human body. And that is what a virus is. So if that's what a virus is, then what's a vaccine? Well, a vaccine is simply an ingenious medication that delivers a weakened or inactivated form of a virus or bacteria into the body. The body's immune system produces antibodies to learn to defend against the virus or bacteria without becoming sick. Then in the future, when the human immune system is attacked by the actual virus or bacteria, our immune system has been trained. It recognizes it immediately as a foreign invader, allowing the antibodies in our immune system to kill and destroy the virus before you become infected. So in short, vaccines enhance your body's natural defenses without causing illness and without other aggressive medications like antibiotics or antivirals or chemotherapy. Almost nothing over the last 100 years or so has had more impact on our quality of life and our life expectancy than vaccines. Only basic sanitation comes close. In fact, one of the first proto-vaccines, inoculation, has been used for hundreds of years. Physicians in the Middle Ages almost figured out the idea during the plague, and during the Revolutionary War, George Washington and his physicians gave a mild form of smallpox to every new soldier entering the Revolutionary Army so that they would not get full-blown smallpox in the middle of the war. This was happening before the germ theory of disease was even discovered. Eventually, smallpox was eradicated worldwide, and, for example, Jonas Salk brought relief to countless millions with the polio vaccine. That's the basic idea of a vaccine. We train our immune system to fight a disease before we get sick, using the body's own immune system. How? Traditionally, this is by using a weakened or inactive killed virus or parts of a virus. Today, vaccines actually work better than they ever have, with fewer bacterial parts or antigens. There's one other way that we're going to talk about today. It's a way that we've gotten the vaccine before the end of 2020. We've harnessed the power of 21st century science. So before I explain the mRNA vaccine, let me explain the normal process of vaccine development, which will allow me to show you how we've sped up the process. Now, some of you listening have worked in the manufacturing industry, or maybe you're in construction. You can imagine, as I start to talk for these next few slides, you'll imagine some of the steps that have been sped up. You can imagine the ways in which this won't compromise safety or efficacy, given the conditions that have happened during this year. So, what are the normal steps in developing a vaccine? Well, normally it's about a 10-year process, but we have compressed this down into less than a year, right at a year. So you might ask, how has that happened? So I'm going to go through some of these preclinical and these different phased trials and how they've been compressed from the normal spaced out time frame. Do one step, then the next step, then the next step. And you can see, spoiler alert, factories and manufacturing started to happen before the studies were done. And I'm going to make the point that much of this compression did not compromise safety. But let me get there. So, in the case of the coronavirus in 2020, because of the pandemic, as researchers discovered and mapped viral particles, they shared the genetic and computerized instructions for these particles over the internet. There was simultaneous testing of multiple antigens, and the whole world was working together as one in many instances. In an instant, 5 or more years of research was expedited because by January, we knew the genetic code of this entire virus. This wasn't proprietary information. It was shared with the world by January. So the next stages of vaccine development and testing is testing it in humans. And so we were able to move right to humans as early as March, just right at the moment that most of us were listening to the news. Vaccine development was underway in humans. And so preclinical testing is testing a variety of antigens, of vaccine particles in animals. This step was not skipped. Phase 1 safety trials are testing on small numbers of people to see what dose confirms immune response and safety. These phases were not skipped. Phase 2 is dividing people into different groups, different ages, the children, elderly. Phase 3 efficacy is finding the right dose. Does it prevent the disease? That's kind of the final step before approval. So how did we move so fast? And where did we cut corners? I want to make the point that really no corners were cut. Yes, it's a compressed time frame. I'm not going to deny that we have a compressed time frame, and no, we don't have years of information about these vaccines, but often that happens after a vaccine is approved. So I mentioned the cooperation. The genetic sequence of SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus that causes COVID-19, was published on January 11th to the world. This expedited 5 or more years of research. There was money. We front-loaded funding to vaccine manufacturers to do this job. In my opinion, this is completely an overlooked rationale for how the speed happened. Let me give you a quick metaphor from life. So your first home might not even been a home. It might have been a dorm room or an apartment. Maybe you lived a few years with your parents. Finally, maybe you saved up and you got a starter home. If things went well, maybe you had a little stability on your job, maybe a promotion or two, maybe you managed to save up enough to add a 2-car garage, maybe it was a porch, maybe it was a pool onto your house over the next 10 to 15 years. And this took a lot of time. But what if, on the other hand, the moment you graduated from high school, you were handed a $3 million inheritance, or lottery, your pick? How quickly would you have been able to build the home of your dreams? With $3 million in cash, you would quite literally be able to do it at the speed of the construction workers. Cash would not have been a barrier. Similarly, the vaccine industry, the pharmaceutical industry in general, is a cutthroat, high-stakes competitive world. Companies invest significantly in many trial drugs and trial vaccines that may never work out. In the case of the pandemic, there was a huge investment up front from society. Basically, we as a society said, here's our tax dollars. Go discover and manufacture a vaccine that gets us out of this mess. On a related point, vaccine manufacturers combined phases. Now, I don't categorize this as a shortcut. This is something they could do because of the money. They didn't have to wait till one phase ended successfully before they spent the money on the next phase. The data is there. They didn't skip the data analysis of safety. They were just doing it because they had the money to do all steps simultaneously. If the studies had gone bust, they would have just been out the stimulus package. So, for example, merging a phase 2 and a phase 3 trial saves 2 to 4 years without impacting safety. We still got all the data. This is extravagant, not unsafe. No CEO, no board of directors, no division chief is going to allow a hugely expensive phase 3 trial to commence before every single shred of effectiveness data from phase 2 is going to be decided in the most cost-effective way. In the case of the pandemic, the upfront money allowed companies to say, hey, let's test out several of these regimens at once. Extravagant, you might even call it wasteful in a sense, rather than cutting corners. Truly, we have all of this data that we normally would have. So 5+ years of research expedited due to cooperation. Let's say 2 to 4, 3+ years of research expedited by combining phases. Pre-orders. Similar to upfront money, knowing that your first 100 million doses would be purchased at a profit, it allows you to move fast as a business. Normally, companies have to wonder, All right, even if we get approval over these next 8 years, is Medicare going to cover it? Will Blue Cross Blue Shield cover this shot? And if so, is it going to be $70 per shot when our costs are $50? What if they only cover What if they only cover $30 per shot and they leave the rest to patient deductibles? Are the patient going to pay the deductibles or the copays? If your customer is the United States of America and the United Kingdom, up for 100 million doses each, at a profit, if you're already a multinational pharmaceutical manufacturing company, you can move pretty fast. It doesn't mean you're cutting safety corners. It just means there is no rate limiting step. There is no friction in this game. Again, this type of speed doesn't impact safety. We have all the data. They just had the upfront money. Predetermined efficacy. We decided at the beginning of this that for a pandemic vaccine, 50% efficacy is going to get approval. This is overlooked also. This type of targeting allows companies to move really fast at the level of the science. Scientific progress. I'm going to discuss this in just a second. So, in summary, so you're telling me, Doc, no safety corners are being cut. I'm making the point that no safety corners have been cut. Normal safety studies have been conducted. Normal numbers of people have been tested. They got statistical significance with the right amount of people based on the prevalence of this disease in society. But yes, I fully acknowledge we only have data from this year. That's got to be thought through, given your level of risk. That's got to be thought through. But we have all the normal amounts of data that we would have for any vaccine approval. And vaccines, if anything, their approval process is even tighter than most drugs that you take. So 5+ years of research expedited due to cooperation, 3+ years of research expedited by combined phases, 2 to 3 years of pre-orders and or money up front. This is how 10 years turned into a year or a year and a half, depending on when you're going to get the vaccine in 2021. I mean, we're in a pandemic. We asked science for a solution. They worked fast, like many others of us have been working fast. So many of you, essential workers, have been out there working hard, working extra shifts when your colleagues went on quarantine. So many of you have been on the front lines. You're exhausted, working extra shifts when your colleagues have been sick or on quarantine or had family reasons they couldn't come in. I've got nurses that have worked weekends setting up fever cough clinics, so that we could respond and not close, but open new clinics during this pandemic so that we could meet the demand for COVID-19 testing, keeping ambulatory patients out of the ERs. We've had facilities and IT and maintenance teams work over weekends to come up with new and creative ways for us to serve patients in a physically distanced way. So many of our healthcare providers have been asked to do 3 years worth of new activities, working long hours with PPE on. It has been just an exhausting year for so many of us. We're all tired. And this vaccine is exactly what so many of us were praying for in March. This is the plan working. Now, I know you still have questions. How does an mRNA vaccine work? Okay, I need to mention scientific progress. This is really cool. The Human Genome Project just happened in 2000. And so what we've done is we've assembled a synthetic genetic molecule based upon known encoding. This is only possible in the 21st century. All right, so the artists at the New York Times have done their own extra effort this year. So again, this coronavirus, they've got this lipid layer, we've got some genetic material in the center, and we've got these protein and carbohydrate spikes on the outside. So here's the spike protein. Here's the gene that codes the protein. All right, so we have synthesized this little segment of genetic material that codes for a protein is surrounded by lipid nanoparticles. This is taken up by the cell. This is your human vaccinated cell. It never gets in the nucleus. It uses your own ribosomes to translate not just the whole virus, but just this one spike protein. You make this spike protein, your vaccinated cell, so we're not growing a whole virus. Your vaccinated cell that produces this spike protein with natural ribosomes presents it to a B cell, which makes an antibody. These antibodies are now available to fight the future virus in a variety of ways with B cells and T cells and more than we want to get into. It is 2 doses. It's a very, very small amount. The first dose happens 21 days later. The next dose happens, and it's 95% effective. Again, we're not growing a full virus. Instead, we've constructed one synthetic code to ask the human body to make a protein that the human immune system can recognize. And then that mRNA particle, that synthetic code, it degrades very, very quickly. The reason it's got to be stored at such ultra low temperatures and surrounded by those lipid particles is because it degrades very quickly. But we've determined that we only need just a little bit of that spike protein to let our immune system learn what that virus looks like and protects us at the 95% level. Many people are asking, will this get into my chromosomes? Will it change my genes? This genetic material sounds scary to me. No. Your DNA and this messenger RNA is 2 completely different things. This is a great question, but it truly is 2 completely different things. So remember, from cell biology, back in 4th grade, 6th grade, maybe it's your AP biology course, remember that the ribosomes are outside the nucleus. The nucleus is where all of your chromosomes, your DNA, your genetic material is. So when you're presented with this very small messenger RNA, it goes to some ribosomes, it makes a spike protein, then it disintegrates within a short period of time, but not before we've made antibodies to that spike protein. There's no biological machinery in the body or in the known world that could take this synthetic fragment of messenger RNA into the nucleus and incorporate it into our DNA, into our genetic material. What is the effectiveness of the messenger RNA vaccine? 95%. The Pfizer vaccine was approved on December 11th, 95%, 2 doses. In the group that got the vaccine, there were only 8 cases of COVID-19. In the placebo group, that's the group that got a sham vaccine, there were 162 cases. This is a 90 to 97% effectiveness rate. And the Moderna vaccine is expected to be approved this upcoming weekend with 2 doses, 4 weeks apart. And again, 95% effectiveness. What are the side effects of the mRNA vaccine? Rigorous safety studies were conducted over 2 months on the 21,000 persons who received both doses. Given the prevalence of COVID-19, this is an absolutely appropriate biostatistical number of people in the therapeutic group. It is a short period of 2 months because we are moving fast, but this is a normal number of people who were vaccinated. We have all the data that we always ask for in vaccine trials. From the New England Journal of Medicine article, you should be able to Google it. There was a good bit of pain at the injection site compared to placebo. There was about the same level of fatigue and headache in these groups, and there was a less than 1% in both the control group and the placebo group of serious adverse events. The researchers concluded in this New England Journal article that none of the serious adverse events that happened in either group were in any way related to the vaccine itself. They were things that were just happening in the normal population. What about the Bell's palsy cases I've heard about over the weekend in the UK news? Well, Bell's palsy is inflammation of the facial nerve that causes a mouth droop. It's benign. It's reversible. It can last a few months. And here's the conclusions that have been made. That Bell's palsy occurs in 10 to 50 people out of 100,000. So that's about 0.01% of the population to 0.05. The 4 cases of Bell's palsy reported after administration of the Pfizer vaccine was 4 out of 21,720, so that's about 0.02%. One case has been definitively attributed as unrelated to the vaccine. The other 3, at the time that I'm recording this YouTube video, have not been definitively concluded, but it takes time to conclude that there is not a cause and effect. But the FDA and the researchers have come to the conclusion that this is the baseline rate of the general population. There is no medical reason to think that these 3 remaining cases are causal in any way. And again, this is a benign condition that is reversible. What about the reports that I've heard on social media that the mRNA vaccine is going to attack the placenta, cause miscarriages, cause infertility? The best I can tell, this came from a popular blog post that's become popular on social media, gone viral, no pun intended. So there have been 42,000 pregnant women just in the U.S. that have been infected with COVID-19 with massive doses of that spike protein. I'm an OB doctor. I'm paying attention to this research. None of our experience with pregnant women with COVID-19 has featured an autoimmune attack on the placenta. We've had a lot of problems with COVID-19, but it has not been an autoimmune attack on the placenta. The spike protein has been there in massive doses, and the best I can tell, this is completely biologically unrelated to the facts of what pregnant women are experiencing from COVID-19. It's not biologically plausible that this would happen from a very, very small dose of the spike protein. It's not related in any way. What about the polyethylene glycol that is a lipid preservative in vaccines? This is also from the same blog post. This PEG is a very common ingredient in a wide range of medications, both oral and injectable. I'm a family doc that not only delivers babies, but I do endoscopy. We use polyethylene glycol all the time for a colonoscopy prep. Some people, a very small percentage of people, have allergies to PEG, just like people can be allergic to any ingredient just about known to man. If you have severe allergies, particularly unexplained hives, angioedema, anaphylaxis, please speak with your primary care physician first before getting this vaccine. But this is a common preservative in other injectable medications, other chemotherapy, many other medications, many medications that are taken orally that need a lipid protective layer. This is not uncommon. This is very, very routine stuff. It is not going to cause massive amounts of allergies in people. Some people are allergic to this ingredient. If you are, be cautious. If you haven't been allergic to this ingredient or don't know that you are, there's absolutely no reason to think that you would become allergic from a 0.05 milliliter preservative of a 0.3 milliliter mRNA. Respectfully, these 2 accusations seem implausible to me, just not warranted by the science. Well, come on, doc. 2 months, really, is that long enough? Let me answer that. I get it. It's been 2 months. I get it. I was nervous. I was nervous a couple of months ago. I've now seen the data. I'm not nervous. I'm going to be the first in line. Let me remind you the complications to the COVID-19 infection itself. People are dying. People are getting admitted to the hospital. I've been taking care of them along with many of my colleagues who have been taking care of them even more in the ICU. Many of our residents and nurse practitioners and PAs have just positively been inundated with our patients in the nursing home. More so in the elderly, but we have even had family members of employees who are in their middle ages with no known risk factors die. We are having cardiovascular complications of blood clots in the legs and in the lungs. kidney injuries, pancreatic injuries, cytokine storm, septic shock. There have been neurological complications. This inability to smell and taste, that's nerve damage. People have a COVID fog. We've had people in our organization who have had neurological complications for 2 months at a time after being infected. We don't know the long-term ramifications of those infections. And I mentioned there have been heart problems from COVID-19. There's been heart problems of blood clots. We have no reason to think this is from a small dose of the spike protein. We have every reason to know beyond the shadow of a doubt this is coming from overwhelming viral infection. You want a vaccine, just like the difference in shingles and the shingles vaccine. You want a vaccine to train you to not have the worst possible complications of this disease. And we know that people are 5 times higher risk of dying in the hospital of COVID-19 compared to the flu. Bottom line, your risks of complications from COVID-19, even as a healthy young person, are massively, massively greater than your risk of complication to getting a tiny dose of vaccine, a tiny instruction to make a tiny amount of fragment to the virus so your immune system knows how to fight off this overwhelming full-body systemic infection that is COVID-19, even in young, healthy adults. Even if you're at low risk of dying, unlike your grandparents, it's a flipping of the coin as to whether you get those other long-term infections. I've made that point. What's the big deal? I'm young at low risk. Why should I take a vaccine anyway? If that didn't convince you, I just want to remind you, we've heard a lot about herd immunity. Vaccines actually work best with herd immunity. So when no one, these are healthy people not immunized, and the red person is not immunized but sick and contagious. When no one's immunized, contagious disease spreads throughout the population very easily. That's what we've been living with. If only some of the population gets immunized, then we still have a spread. Some of these people are hospitalized. Some of them die. Some of these people have neurological complications. Some of these people have blood clots and heart problems. But if everyone gets immunized, it stops the spread. The spread goes down to a bare minimum. This is actually what herd immunity is, and this is how vaccines work best. Listen, I want to get back to these days. I want to get back to where the herd is immune, and we can use our herd to do fun things like football and orchestra concerts and music concerts. This is so not fun. The empty stadiums and the empty churches and the canceled buildings. More questions. What if I already had COVID-19? The recommendations are forthcoming at the moment. The doses that are available this week, we're waiting 90 days until COVID is passed. That is just triage. That is just to preserve doses. There's no reason to think that there's going to be any side effects of having a previous COVID infection and then needing a booster. We are all expecting this immunity to wane. So this is the point. Will I need a booster? It might be like a tetanus every 5 to 10 years or like the flu shot every year. The recommendations are forthcoming. My guess is we'll probably be getting this inoculation just like we get the flu vaccine every year, because immunity is probably going to wane like it does for the normal coronavirus that wears off in 6 to 9 months. It's why you get the common cold again and again. I bet this will happen with COVID-19, but that's just an educated guess. It's definitely not going to be a side effect of a repeat injection, just like we don't see massive allergic reaction to repeat flu vaccine. Tens and hundreds of thousands of us in healthcare get our flu shot every single year with minimal side effects, just a little fever, ache, pain in the arm. Listen, let's redeem this year. What a challenging year it's been for all of us. This question I got from a town hall, how realistic is it we've had a vaccine? This is really, it's like a Christmas miracle. The vaccine is here. I'm so excited about it. When your dose is manufactured, I encourage you to line up and let's get back to the joy of fellowshipping as social creatures with each other. Look for Pfizer and Moderna to win the Nobel Peace Prize, or at least the mRNA nanotechnology folks to win the Nobel Prize for medicine. Just my humble opinion, said with respect for differing opinions. I really think this is like a World War II victory, or the elimination of smallpox, or the Human Genome Project. We should be proud of what we've accomplished as a species, as a society. What an amazing time to live. How long will I need to continue wearing my mask? Until 7 days after the second dose for society, until we get herd immunity. We're going to have to mask up until we can convince some 85% of us to get this vaccine. Remember this slide. If we can get herd immunity from the vaccine instead of from the masks, we'll get there. We'll get there. So remember, wearing your mask, it's the best for the healthy people and the asymptomatic carriers to both be wearing masks. This makes it a non-exposure with physical distancing. You add the vaccine there, you get 85% of us vaccinated. We get these masks off. It's going to be amazing. Wear your mask, wash your hands, wave, namaste, or elbow bump, watch your distance. That's the 4 W's. It's going to be so awesome in 2021 when we get back to life as we've known it before. What a party it's going to be. Let's get there. I'm so excited about this vaccine. Cahaba Medical Care, for those of you that are within our 4-county area, we're here for you for the long haul. I hope this has been a helpful, educational slide deck for our patients and our community members. We're here for you for the long haul, not just during this pandemic. We've got 17 locations. Feel free to look us up on the web. We're on Facebook. We have a patient portal. If you go to our website, you can sign up. If we can help you, we've got no appointment COVID-19 testing in our Birmingham locations, in our rural locations. Happy to help in any way that we can.